Hello, everybody, and welcome to Electric City Sentai Denzicaster here on Geek Carolina. I'm your host, Mike. This is my co-host, Nolan. And this week we are joined by...
Chris.
And I'm Josh, Joe Gibkin's homeboy, and that's your Topaz champion right over there.
We were subtitling this episode, Three Geeks and a Baby.
Ship it!
So, this week we checked out episodes 5 and 6. You know, normally I'd be doing things with my hands, but they're full of fun. 5 and 6. Did you just put up a 5 and a 3?
If you're going to do sign language, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So if you're going to do 5 and 6.
The more you know.
Who knew? We've learned out that Chris has a new skill this week. But we checked out episodes 5 and 6 of Toei's Spider-Man from 1978 right here on the show. These two episodes, which are titled Crash GP7, The Oath Siblings, and episode 6, Shuddering Laboratory, Professor Monster is the Devil. So that's the two episodes we checked out. I was hoping to find rough synopses on tokusatsu.fandom, and there are none. So, hey, that is what it is. So, just really rough top-level stuff for this. The Oath Siblings involves a kid getting run down by a truck. And what I jokingly said is basically the birth of this universe's eventual Miles Morales, we're going to assume, decades before Miles Morales was a thing. But basically, an 8-year-old winds up seeing a plan to use some missiles begin to form from the Iron Cross Army, our big bad guys. And the Iron Cross Army, particularly Amazonas, decides that the kid has to die. So... after the kid shows a working knowledge of camouflage that would put some Special Forces soldiers to shame.
What can you say? The kid's crafty.
Yes.
Super crafty kid.
He winds up getting run down by a box truck being driven by the Gumps of our series, the Ninders. And then we also wind up eventually with the kid in the hospital, and Spider-Man in his civilian form winds up agreeing to a blood transfusion. Remember, this version of Spider-Man gets his powers from the blood of a native of the planet Spider. So now the blood of planet Spider also flows through the veins of this little kid. And we will probably never see any mention of it ever again because it's 70s Toku. But it's kind of cool to think that this kid one day is going to grow up to be Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And then, episode 6... basically explains how Professor Monster modifies all these humans to be his soldiers, and they live and die at his command, dying multiple times if necessary. And one of Spider-Man's old friends is one of these candidates for being a monster, and it all turns out to be a big plot to assassinate Spider-Man, and still Spider-Man helps his buddy. So that's kind of your high-level stuff. So what did we think overall? Overall impressions of these couple episodes. Is this the first two episodes you've watched most of the way through, Chris?
Yes, actually.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you first. Your first impressions of Toei's Spider-Man.
Dark. Like, no joke.
Yeah.
like Spider-Man at one point, I watched, I think it was episode 6, picks up a Tommy gun and starts, or whatever, you know, what he's starts mowing down. It's just like, what
if you want, run if you want to live.
Yeah, that's
and in episode 5, I mean, on multiple, Spider-Man straight up hangs guys with his web.
It's just like, wow. I was like, I understand, but this Spider-Man literally is by any means necessary.
This is a Spider-Man that Frank Castle could get by.
Yeah, Spider-Man in this show is, even his roll call where he says he is an emissary of hell. Yeah, very dark, all by any means necessary. This show, we have seen in 6 episodes, we have seen an 8-year-old get run down by a truck. We have seen more bullets than, frankly, we've seen more bullets used in 6 episodes than a comparable amount of time out of some Hong Kong movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. We have seen hangings. We have seen stabbings. We've seen people thrown off a cliff. We've seen people try and commit suicide and get shot in midair while doing it.
Oh, and we also saw a steel cage death match.
Yes, we saw a steel cage death match. That was the last time we watched Spider-Man. So, yeah, dark's a good word. What about you, Josh?
This one, so far, like, I still will refer to Spider-Man as the reverse Johnny Sacco.
Okay.
As in where, like, Johnny Sacco's like, oh, I gotta watch more Johnny Sacco. And with Spider-Man, I'm like, yeah, wow, Spider-Man, let's watch another episode. But, I have to say that, definitely a much more grimdark version of the character than the 70s Marvel equivalent Peter Parker Spider-Man.
Sure.
Yes.
And to give credit where it's due, I will say that I look at this version of Spider-Man. I enjoyed Johnny Sacco by the time all was said and done. You can say it was Stockholm Syndrome if you want, but I actually did enjoy it by the time all was said and done. But Spider-Man, I love because we're watching Toku history. This is where a lot of Toku tropes that we see in Super Sentai later all originate, is with Spider-Man. Anything in these particular episodes that you looked at as your favorite moment, the thing you liked the most out of those pair of episodes? While they're thinking, I'm going to go first. Spider-Man popping up in a laboratory with a Tommy gun and telling them all, run or die, basically, to all of the Nenders that are there. Just amazing to me.
And these were management level Nenders, because
Yes,
they're wearing the white
coats.
So that's probably the thing I like the most is it's Spider-Man. I mean, you really can't argue that it's not Spider-Man, but it's a very different Spider-Man, and I kind of like that.
To be honest, I just like the Gumps in general. The
Nenders?
The Nenders. Because, like, they do some weird, great ninja stuff. Like, in episode 6, like, they literally work the trees themselves. They're like they literally stack themselves 3 high, just hold themselves up. And when the girl Junko comes out to try to help, whatever his name was, I can't remember off the top of my head. She comes out and all of a sudden, like, and camouflage gone. And all right, it's just like they were the trees themselves. I love it. It was great. It's like, granted, these Gumps weren't all that in bag of chips, but it still was like fun to see them be able to do these fancy moves and tricks.
What about you, Josh?
Like, one of the things I liked is in episode 6, where Takuya actually shows that, like, in his civilian identity, he tries to be the most uncoordinated, clumsy dude on the planet.
Like almost Chris Reeves level of trying to hide your secret identity.
He was Clark Kent and hard in episode 6. Also, another thing I like is the monsters in this one, where usually in Toku, they beat up the monster and then they get big. No, these monsters think strategically. They're like, I'm just going to get giant first.
Yeah.
Like, out the jump.
I like that.
3 moves of doom.
Yeah, 3 moves of doom. So that will take us to the parts we don't like about these couple episodes. Anything that you just looked at and went, ugh.
The phantom bumps.
Yes,
as in like before, like Leopardon would hit the monster would just spontaneously fall on his back like he got hit.
But it's the only move that he doesn't actually get hit by, and that's what bugs me.
So I think it was the Leopardon string or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Basically, it's supposed to be like a webbing attack from the giant monster itself, or from the giant robot itself, Leopardon, and you see something shoot out of Leopardon, but you never see anything actually hit the monster. The monster just falls. So that, yeah, I can definitely see that as being a good moment.
I mean, and then the overall, like, just straight up 3 moves of doom was what gets me. I'm like, no fight at all. It's just he sells nothing. Like, but the bad guy can literally do something. You just like, I'm gonna walk forward and 3 moves of doom. And
so,
it's like,
to explain this to our viewers, if you're not a wrestling fan, then you don't know about the X moves of doom, no matter who it is.
Mm-hmm.
Hulk Hogan had his 3 moves of doom, which was generally 3 punches, a boot, and a leg drop. Mm-hmm. John Cena has, the 6 moves of doom?
Yeah.
And he introduced the 7th, and that's actually what it's called, is like the 7th move of doom, and it's the goofy-ass looking back fist.
yes.
Well, in Spider-Man, we've jokingly started calling it the 3 moves of doom, which is Spider-Man shows up, does the Leopardon string, the arc boomerang, and then throws the sword Vigor and impels the bad guy with it. Nolan doesn't like it either. And so with that, part of the reasoning for that happening was because at some point, and we think we've pretty much pinpointed that it has to have been around this time in the show's production, the Leopardon suit went missing. And I've heard different versions of the story. I've heard that it was like damaged irreparably. I've heard that it got stolen. I've heard that it just went missing. Lots of different rationales for why it happened. But basically, at a certain point, they have to start using nothing but stock footage for the giant monster fights. They didn't abandon doing the giant monster fights, but they just basically, you never see Leopardon and the giant monster on screen at the same time ever again. And if you want an example of a modern day version of that, go back and watch Power Rangers Season 2, because they do that a lot in there, because they had a bunch of footage that was shot especially for Power Rangers using the Daizujin, the original Megazord suit, in Japan, and with totally new monsters that had never appeared in Zyuranger or Dairanger, the Super Sentai show that followed it, which is where we get the Thunder Zords from. Oh, buddy. And so they wind up re-editing that footage to show the Thunder Megazord fighting the evil monsters instead, where if you freeze frame some of that stuff, you will see the Thunder Megazord swing its saber, and if you cut to where the monster gets hit and you freeze frame it, you will see the original Megazord sword.
Whoops.
Editing. So, yeah, so that's basically why we get the 3 moves of Doom. I think I would have rather them... You would wish that they would have built a new suit.
Yes.
That maybe they could have worked some angle that, like, the first Leopardon got destroyed
or something. But
and then worked it in somehow.
Yeah, but budget, I'm sure, was a concern, as it is on all of these shows. My least favorite thing is, out of this pair of episodes, is Spider-Man pulling new powers out his ass. So, in episode... I don't know if you were here to see this part of episode 5, but at one point in episode 5, the narrator informs us that Spider-Man can, through his special powers, can see what is in this box truck being delivered to a warehouse, and therefore knows it's a sealed truck. So what we've established here is that this Spider-Man has X-ray vision.
And I'm like, yeah, spider sense don't work that way, dude.
Yeah. And then a little later on in the same episode, apparently he also has super hearing, because he hears the kid screaming from a far distance away. So I'm kind of sitting here looking at this going, okay, so we've established he realistically doesn't have spider sense as we know it. He realistically doesn't have webbing the way we think of it. But apparently he has X-ray vision and super hearing.
So Superman?
So he's Super Spider. Is what we're discovering here. There's a part of me, I don't mind them pulling new powers out their bum. That actually doesn't bother me too much.
So what you're saying, Mike, is he's the last son of Planet Spider?
Yes, he is the last son. He's the last son of Spider. I wish that they would have made an effort to explain it away in something closer to Spider-Man's actual powers. Like, he sensed something from the truck and play it away as his spider sense. And maybe it's a little different than Peter Parker's. It's not necessarily his impending danger or impending danger around him in an immediate fashion. Maybe it's a little more predictive. Something like that, I think, would have probably worked better. But for the purposes of the story, the narrator tells us that he has X-ray vision without saying X-ray vision. So, what are we looking forward to as we move on? Because I will go ahead and tell you, this is mine and Josh's new Guilty Pleasure show. This has taken over the Johnny Sacco spot in our lineup. Except that we can more easily get other people to come and watch this one with us.
That's fair.
The next 2 are called Fearful Hit Tune, the Song Dancing Murder Rock.
I want to see the bad guys.
Oh, that actually sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah, I want
Not gonna lie.
to see the bad guys.
And episode 8, Once Upon a Time in the Mysterious... How would you actually... Okay. Once Upon a Time in the Mysterious-less World, the Cursed Cat Mound.
I want to see the bad guys in both of those.
So,
based on the titles alone.
That's our next 2 episodes. So what are we thinking going forward with Spider-Man?
Wow. The 70s.
I'm curious to see... I'm actually looking forward to seeing how many different disciplines that Professor Monster is a professor of. At this point, he's been a roboticist, a geneticist,
Biologist.
a biologist.
He has all the doctors.
Apparently.
Don't call him Mr. Monster.
No.
Oh no.
What about you, Chris?
I mean, to be honest, I've really enjoyed looking at the bad guys of the week. I think a lot of them, they're goofy, but they're worth. I like what they.
They're when you stop and you think to yourself, this was done in '78.
Yeah.
Then you sit there and go, wow, this actually seems really cool.
One other
It
thing,
does.
though,
Don't get me wrong. Like we talked about this earlier about me talking about. I wonder what this would look like, or I think this would be really nice if this was modern time or closer to modern time, where they had all the cool special effects we have today. And no, that wasn't a rip that saying this Spider-Man was bad, man.
Yeah.
It was just like I think like it'd be awesome to see what they could do with what we have now.
Right. No, absolutely.
Oh, and actually, one last thing about the Monster of the Week for episode 6 was he was made for one very specific service for Professor Monster, which is he's a bloodhound.
Right.
He tracks with super scent. I like how all the monsters so far, they all serve a very singular purpose.
Right. So,
Which is why I'm looking forward to the Monsters of the Week for the next couple episodes.
and what are your final thoughts there, Nolan?
Yeah.
Anything? He is
Deep.
Yes, he is speechless with anticipation, folks. I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of Spider-Man 2 because I like anything that's old Toku history, and I love seeing where this stuff comes from. And I actually really enjoy old Tokusatsu, and so this is a really cool show to go back and look at. An interesting chapter, not just in Toku history, but in superhero television live-action history, because this is, for the longest time, from a pure performance standpoint of the dude in the suit, this was probably as close as you got to Spider-Man looking the way he looked in the comic books in live action for a very long time. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of this as well. We hope that you enjoyed. We hope that you're watching Spider-Man along with us. Of course, we want you to share, like, and subscribe. Do all the wonderful things that you do here on the YouTubes. You can check out Chris on 8 Star Anime. They've got some episodes coming up real soon as I get done editing them. And we've got, I think, for the return of Chopsaki Cinema full force with the whole cast and everything.
My return to Chopsaki.
Your return to
Yes.
Chopsaki. Well, I say the full original cast, so like you and William both host together. Y'all are doing you've got a theme month.
Oh yeah, actually, because I was very pleased to realize that they put a lot of Takashi Miike's movies on Amazon Prime, including all 3 of his Dead or Alive movies. So me and William are going to do a Dead or Alive month.
and since there's only 3 Dead or Alive movies by Takashi Miike, I have challenged Josh that the 4th movie for that month needs to be the not terribly good American Dead or Alive based on the video game.
I'm like, oh no.
So,
Mike, you're gonna make us review an Uwe Boll movie, aren't you?
Here's the thing: if you're gonna do the other 3 DOA movies, might as well go ahead and do the 4th one, get it out of the way.
And then when Mike told me that, I'm like, well, you know that.
I got that, but you just got to. You got
Well, I told Mike, I'm like,
comparison.
funny you should mention that, Mike. Yes, that DOA movie is also on Prime.
There you go. I think that will be their East meets West episode for that one. And of course, plenty of more Denzicaster in the upcoming weeks. And don't forget to check out these 2 gents as members of Delta Squad on Delta Squad, our RPG inspired by Power Rangers SPD with Rage Quit Radio. That's coming out one episode a month, broken up into several parts. Episode 2, I think, is the one that's current as of the moment, is the one that's currently airing. So, folks, do all those things. Let us know what you like in the comments below. If you didn't like something, same thing. Just let us know in the comments below. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Any feedback helps. And until next time, for Nolan, who is ready to call this episode done, I'm Mike.
I'm Chris.
I'm Josh.
And we'll see you next time on Denzicaster.